I'm Gina Jones, and this is my story. So I grew up as the baby of 5 children of a dysfunctional family that lived in the Ozarks of Missouri. And when I say dysfunctional, my father, bless his heart, came home from Korea, different and very hard to live with. My childhood was running through the fields or going out into the woods to hide away from all the dysfunction, traveling from opera houses to bars. My family was full of musical people, so I started practicing behind the scenes. My mother noticed that I knew songs. We needed a bass player. She said, let Gina do it. She knows all the songs. We went that weekend to a theater not far from Branson, Missouri, and it was called Buck Cody's Jamboree. And my mother fixed me all up with a little fringe jacket and skirt and a bunch of makeup and big hair. She said, now I want you to go to your brother and ask him if you can get up and sing with his band. And if he says no, then I want you to march right up to the owner and ask him if you can sing with his band. I did do that. I went over to my brother and he just said, no way, you brat. I marched right up the stairs to the side of the stage and asked Mr. Buck Cody, can I sing with your band because my brother won't let me? And he said, well, what's your name? And I said, it's Gina. And he said, well, come on, little Miss Gina. And he pushed me right out on the stage. He started the music, the spotlight hit me, and I was just like frozen in time. He had to dance over and tell me, okay, we're gonna try this again. Keep your eyes on the front 2 rows and just come in, when we tell you to. It was like it was born into me. I was working the stage from side to side. It was phenomenal what happened in front of like 1,000 people my first time. The biggest challenge I faced was when 3 of my siblings left the home early. They were 15 or 16. They either got married or they ran away. And my father moved us to Idaho, myself and my other brother. And that was a horrible move for me because I had great grades in Missouri. I wanted to stay there, but it didn't happen. So I ended up in this school where they were bullying me. I would leave the school to walk home. I would be rat-packed by girls that were just beating the, wad out of me. So I fell in with the stoner crowd because they accepted everyone. And I ended up with a little boyfriend there. On New Year's Eve, my father, for some reason, let him drive me home. Instead of him driving me home, we ended up at his house and there was a party going on. And he took me downstairs to his room. I did lose my innocence that night. And when I went home the next day, obviously my father was extremely upset. But the main madness came 4 weeks later when I didn't have a monthly cycle and I knew I was pregnant. I told my sister, and my sister called and told my parents. My father beat me with a rod that, a belt that had the hook on it, and he beat me with the hook portion. The next morning, I had to go dress down. PE was my first class, and I went ahead and dressed down, and they were so horrified. They sent me to the counselor. Counselor sent me to the police. The police drilled me for 2 or 3 hours. Then, of course, they picked my father up, and I went to a foster home. So I stayed there for probably 6 to 8 weeks, and when it was time for me to go back home, which they always push you back into the home, no matter what, I was there for one night, and the next morning I took my backpack, all my school things, and dumped them out into the garbage can, and I went all the way down the alley to the end of the alley, and I stuck my thumb out, and I hitchhiked and ran away to California. In California, I eventually was staying with some family friends. Their son was a big drug dealer. I ended up with him as girlfriend, and he would send me out to his elite clients with some drugs, and he would say, oh, just go be nice to the man. And I had been hearing that since I was little, go be nice to the old man and sit on his lap and sell your records. I didn't even know what prostitution was at 15 and a half. And I was selling his drugs and making money and learning the drug trade. Within a year, I ended up, though, married to another kid. He was 18. It was horrible abuse with that marriage. I lost 4 children before I was able to have one child, and I had a daughter. It kind of spiraled from there. We did divorce, and I ended up into a seedy world in Las Vegas of stripping, and then went to San Diego, and I was running a escort service, even going across the border to Mexico and bringing drugs over, and the music had fallen away. I made it a point in life to change my path. When I came back from Mexico, I decided I would move to Nashville and try to pursue what I knew the best and the most. It was singer-songwriter. I did go to Nashville, tried to get in with the right crowd, but it just seems like that when you're on a downward spiral, it's like there's an energy attached to that. Maybe, I always say, I must have had a sign on the back, on my back that said, pick me, I'll, go do whatever, for a living. So I laugh about it, but it's not funny, but it is how it is. I ended up with a guy who was kind of pushing me into music, and he was like the king of Nashville, and he said, you know what you'd be great at? And I hadn't even told him my past. And he said, you'd be great if we opened up an escort service and you ran it, and I could bring all my friends in, my famous friends, and you'd make a ton of money and all this. And I'm like, oh boy, it came back around for me. I ended up having two lives, the singer-songwriter life, and went on the street corners, and I sang and sold my CDs. I had a place right there on Music Row that I ran an escort service out of in the Spence Manor, and that's a very prominent place at that time, and it's a historic landmark. There was a pivotal point in my life in Nashville that started changing me. I was atheist, I was raised that way. Had a $1,500 a week drug habit. It was cocaine and meth and all of that. I was living large in Green Hills besides the Spence Manor thing. I didn't live there, I lived somewhere else. I had been up all night long with a record label guy, just talking to him, and we were doing drugs. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I started losing my breath and I was turning gray, and I'd never had that experience before. So I knew that I was overdosing. I literally felt a presence come into the room, and again, I was atheist. It's like anything other than myself was not true. I heard in my spirit, it was like an audible voice, get on your knees and pray for the desire to leave you. And there was a pile of drugs like that there, and I pushed them off on a plate, dumped them in the toilet, never wanted them again, never had to go to rehab. My story is hard to tell, and most women would sweep it under the rug. I actually did sweep it under the rug for many, many years, and I decided that there is no way that I'm going to do that anymore, because there are too many people out there that need to hear it, number one. And number two, if I make a fortune from it, I don't even think about that. I think more about the one lost person out there that needs some encouragement. There was a lady on the street yesterday with her little child. I went over to her and she couldn't speak English, but I put my hand on her head and I said, I'm praying for you. And she said yes, and she started sobbing. I kind of stroked the little daughter's hair. And so that's what drives me, is a one-on-one thing, even more so than a big, huge blow-up of tons of people, which, by the way, I do know that that's going to happen, but one-on-one is more what tugs at my heart and keeps me going.